Photography's been a big part of my life for a long time now, and it's been different things to me over the years. And lately, the thing that I keep finding myself saying to different people in different conversations is that I want my hobby back. And I've been thinking a lot about what that means for me. When I first got started, all I really had to go on was this curiosity and wonder about what photography could be. I had no long term goals for success, no aspirations in terms of what I wanted to be. I wasn't even considering myself a photographer. I just wanted to learn more about cameras and I wanted to take pictures, and that was it. And for years, that was good enough. I went out, I took pictures of the things that fascinated me, whether it was long exposure or shallow depth of field, just like soaking up as much technical information as I could, even if I had no idea how to execute it. For me, it was just part of the learning process, and that's what made it really exciting for me. I had no idea whether I was going to be able to achieve any of those things, but anytime I did anything that was a little bit interesting, I was excited. That's how street photography found me. I was going out after work, basically trying to have an escape from my boring desk job. And I started sharing my work with my friends on Facebook. And then eventually I started sharing it on Tumblr and built out a following there. And all of that felt really good and organic. And it just felt like finding a community and being excited about photography for photography's sake. And then I started doing concert photography, which honestly started from the same place, really. It was me putting together something that I was curious about in photography with another thing that I loved, which was music and live music. So I put those things together, and again, it was another learning process. I had no real idea what I was doing. I wasn't comfortable. I was coming from street photography. I didn't really know anything about high ISO, low light photography. And little by little, I started figuring things out and doing a lot of research and a lot of reading and a lot of trial and error. And I got to the point where I took a couple of decent photos here and there, and I wanted to do more of it. So I started looking into how I could make that happen for myself. And that's when I kind of got pushed inadvertently into music photography as a side hustle. I was working a 9 to 5, but I knew that if I wanted to do more live music and I wanted to do it in bigger venues or with larger artists, that I wasn't going to be able to just show up with a camera and I wasn't going to be able to just ask around. I needed to have an in. So I started trying to get in with publications and blogs and all kinds of different things. And over the years, I've done quite a few things. I've shot for Live Nation. I currently shoot for The Bowery Presents. I've shot for Stereo Gum, The Village Voice, Paste Magazine, Rolling Stone. It's been really cool and really, really exciting. And I'm so proud of myself for having come this far, starting from not knowing the first thing about cameras to being able to have a byline in a publication like Rolling Stone, being able to say that my photos have been nominated for awards. It's not lost on me that that's like a massive journey, and I'm super grateful for it. And I think that I wouldn't do anything differently. But I do think that the passion of it kind of got away from me the more that I tried to make it my profession. And this is not for lack of like business acumen or anything like that. I think that I'm I'm very introverted, but I don't really have a problem talking about photography. Um, I do have a problem with kind of like playing the game or whatever that means. I'm not good at that kind of networking. I am good at making connections with people over a common interest, over a shared passion, but when it comes to kind of just like massaging a relationship in order to get ahead or get an opportunity, it doesn't really work out like that for me. The more that I put into trying to do that, the more I started to lose my enjoyment of live music photography. Over the years, I've just kind of like tried to shift my perspective and my relationship with that kind of interaction so that I could, I don't know, keep my sanity and keep doing what I love doing. And I was always just hopeful that, hey, the right people will find me and the right people will see my work and they'll connect with me and that'll be enough. And I think that for the most part, that's been true. Then I got laid off from my job and I was unemployed for 2.5 years. And it was a really miserable time. Aside from the fact that, just the baseline disappointment and kind of depression of not having a job, it stung a little extra to know that I had this talent that I could tap into and also feel like I was decently connected in the industry, but that I really couldn't get a job there either. I was struggling with my desk job stuff, but I was also having a hard time getting paid gigs for photography. And it was really hard not to get jaded by that. And that kind of leads me to the next thing that was really disappointing about this particular stage of my photography journey. And that's having to deal with social media and its, I don't know, its ever changing landscape. Um, it was having to navigate all of this. And I started thinking about this a lot more because lately I've been going to a bunch of in person events. And those in person events have been so restorative. Being able to go up to someone and speak to them and talk about what you love about photography, it reminded me of what got me into it in the first place. And having that enthusiasm seen by another person and then reciprocated felt really good. And that's a super stark contrast to the way I tend to experience the community online. The community online sometimes feels like, the best analogy I can give is like it feels like going into the middle of Times Square and holding up a picture or a sign or something. You're surrounded by people. There's thousands of people around you, but no one's looking. No one sees you. You're there. You can see them. You know they're there, but everyone's just focused on something else. Everyone's preoccupied with something else. And that is a different kind of lonely. It was the kind of thing that really shook my confidence in wanting to continue. It shook my confidence in, yeah, it shook my confidence in wanting to continue. It didn't shake my confidence in myself, but that didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like enough to be like, hey, I think I make some cool stuff. I think I make things that are beautiful and noteworthy. It kind of felt like abandonment, you know? And that was very discouraging for me. And by comparison, going to see a conversation between a photographer and an editor, or two photographers, or a curator and an artist, and see that shared passion happen in real time, and then being able to go up to anyone at this event and immediately just fall in lockstep about what it is that we like about the artistry of photography. That felt good. That felt like being seen. I know that it's not really realistic to expect that kind of connection over the internet. You know, these platforms by design kind of gamify all kinds of engagement and interaction. So everyone's really just speed running the whole thing, right? They're just dropping fire emoji and likes and hands in the air and, the same kind of 2 and 3 word comments. Not to say that there's no genuine interaction to be found, but the signal to noise ratio is really off. So even if you are being your most sincere, your most genuine, when you reach out to people, especially people who have large followings and have a name for themselves and have some level of prestige, it's difficult to cut through all that noise and be seen as a genuine person. And on the other end of it, when you produce work, when you create and you put that out into, the social network ether, a lot of who sees what you do is out of your control. I mean, this video included, all of these things are kind of subject to algorithms, right? So you create and you really want to share what you've made with others. You want to share the joy that you felt with others. And online, that can seem really quiet as well. So you put your work out into the world, and again, going back to that Times Square analogy, you're just out there and people are just going by, right? So what I've been trying to do, and what I've been doing, I should say, is yeah, I've been working actively to take my hobby back. And that looks like being a fan of things, being someone who wants to still soak up information and be appreciative of the work of others. So that looks like showing up for in person events, going to conversations and gallery openings, and showing support to the people whose work I admire and speaking to them when I can and having in person conversations and in person connections. That feels really authentic. That feels restorative. I already said that, but it really does. And it's edifying. It makes me feel like I should go out and do more for myself and do more for others. It just creates this interesting feedback loop. And online engagement, yeah, it just makes me feel like I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to deal with all the silence. Something else that I really appreciate about in-person interaction is no one knows when I approach them what my follower count is or any of my metrics. They don't know what my grid looks like. They're not concerned about any of those things. They're just seeing a person approach them, and they're getting an impression of me based on how I speak to them and how I regard them and the respect that I show for them. And that feels really nice. Online, it's really hard to convey that. I've already kind of gone over why, but you send a DM to someone, and the first thing that they see about you may not even be what you said. It might be your stats. That might be the first thing that someone checks for. They might look and see, oh, they don't have that many followers, or they're not followed by anyone I know, and they disregard you. And that interaction wouldn't happen in person. But again, The platforms are kind of designed that way. It's not something that I blame people for, but I do blame the platform. I do think it's not really conducive to community building in quite the same way. It's not impossible, but it's definitely difficult. So, yeah, I've just been trying to reclaim my hobby. I've been trying to tap back into the things about photography that excite me and keep me curious and keep me learning. So that means going out and doing more street photography. That means not shooting as many shows, but shooting shows for different reasons. Most recently, I went to photograph a show purely because a friend of mine was a fan of the band and I thought it was going to be a challenging shoot. And I came away with some really cool stuff. But that was my motivation. It wasn't to get a byline anywhere, it wasn't to get a high paying gig, it wasn't to get a tour or anything like that. And of course, no shade to anyone who aspires to do those things. I'm just saying that for me personally, that's not something that I'm looking to do anymore. I really want to be happy with my photography, and the grind of trying to make it as a full-time photographer just wasn't for me. Even when it was like at my most desperate moment and I needed to have work to keep the lights on, um, it just didn't click for me in that way. So I've spent this year thinking about how to retain the happiness that I have and the wonder and the amazement and the things that keep photography precious for me. And this is kind of the answer that I came up with. Stay curious, stay excited, stay hopeful, go out in search of those things. And so far, that's been really good. I'm not doing as many photo assignments, but the ones that I do, I can always say that I'm excited about them. I don't go out and take street photos every day, but when I do, I genuinely feel excited and inspired and ready to do more. And that's just what it's been for me. That has been taking my hobby back. And that's also why I've been printing things and going to gallery shows and talking to so many people, because that's the thing. Those are the things that keep me coming back. And I'm so grateful for all the people that I have met through all the different kinds of photography that I've done. And I know that some of that wouldn't exist if I hadn't gotten into concert photography. I mean, some of the best people that I've ever met in my life are people that I met in the photo pit, people that I met at a gallery or a museum. They are some of the most amazing, kind hearted, talented, wonderful people that I've ever known. And I wouldn't give that up. But for personal peace, I think that pulling back and covering fewer shows, not having to send out cold email after cold email, not standing in another loud bar giving an awkward conversation about what I do, trying to convince a stranger that I am important enough to remember, that has protected my peace. Avoiding those things has protected my peace, and it's protected my passion. Um, that's kind of all I really wanted to say. This is mostly off the cuff, based on conversations that I've found myself having over and over. And I've also, the world has this way of kind of like showing the things that you've been thinking, and saying them back to you. And I've also been coming across videos from creators on YouTube who have been talking about you know, reconnecting with community and reconnecting with their passion and simplification of the things that they enjoy. And I'm sitting there watching those videos and going, yeah, same here. Let me know what you're thinking. What's your relationship with photography? If it's something that you do as a hobby and for money, um, how do you strike that balance? How do you keep one from consuming the other? How do you protect your passion? I'd really love to know your thoughts and your practices. So let me know. That's going to be it for me. And I guess I'll see you in the next one.